Hello everyone, my name is Trainmaster GT, and welcome to our Trainz M120 module build series. So recently, my channel celebrated its second anniversary, and so I thought it'd be kind of nice for this video to make a module that was thematically tied to a previous project of mine. Now, I thought long and hard about what module would maybe be the best to kind of do a similarly themed build to, but I ultimately decided on the Long Lake Lumber Company. Now, the reason for this is quite simple. I needed a place to actually get the logs from that we would be milling at the lumber company. So, it seems like a pretty reasonable follow-up. Now, I wanted to make sure that the module looked good in both Trainz 12 and Trainz 2019. I'll talk more about those considerations I made later to make sure that everything worked out nicely together, but as you'll see at the end of the video, it does look very good in both versions of the game, and I think you'll all be very pleased to see how it works. Now, you've already seen me use the majority of the techniques I use in this video in previous builds, so I'm going to actually spend some time talking about the history of the equipment and other objects I'm placing on the route. So this device is called a decker, and it's basically a two-story crane on rails. Its undersection is open, so a string of log cars can be pushed through. Then, the train would reverse, and each log car would be loaded one by the crane section above. These were really interesting tools because they could be easily moved from logging camp to logging camp. Not very many existed in real life, but they were a very easy and effective tool for the few companies that did have them for loading their log cars. So now I'm working on placing some bunks for the loggers. Lumber companies would often have their employees live on site so that they could have more productive time during the day. It would really suck if employees had to spend a large amounts of times commuting out to the fairly backwoodsy places where they would be chopping trees. So by having them live effectively on site, they'd be able to increase productivity. This is especially important for a time before modern logging equipment when you could maybe only cut down like 10-15 trees in a day if you were lucky. Now there's one other advantage gained by companies by having their employees live near the work site, and it had to do with payment. Instead of paying their employees with real money, they would pay them in what was called a Company Scrip. Basically, it's company money that is only useful at a company store. Since employees were only able to buy things from the company store, it meant that if a company were to overprice its products compared to what their workers could actually afford, they could effectively force their workforce into a crippling spiral of debt. It was a really sleazy tactic, and it was eventually outlawed in most places. People really seem to forget how important the labor rights movement was in making sure that everyone was paid in a fair and equitable manner, and it's just a real shame that we've forgotten that in our popular zeitgeist as of today. As romantic as the railroads of this time period may have been, it really was not a great time to be a worker in a logging company. So this route is pretty unique in the fact that it was meant to work in 4 versions of Trainz Simulator: Trainz 12, Trainz Mac 2, Trainz A New Era, and Trainz 2019. So what that meant is I had to have a few considerations that I normally wouldn't for route building. First, I had to pick textures that would look decent in the newer versions of the game. In Trainz 12, most assets that are vaguely HD look fine. However, they did a major lighting overhaul between the time of Trainz 12's release and Trainz 2019. So now, a lot of older assets look weird and shiny when you use them in the game. So I had to do my best to make sure that the grasses I were using did not end up looking like reflective glass surfaces. The other major consideration I had to take into account were the trees. The speed tree engine in Trainz 2012 looks quite a bit different from the one in Trainz 2019, and what that means is certain trees just do not look good in the newer version of the game. In addition, I can't actually use a lot of the newer tree assets since they don't work with the older version of the game. As such, I actually had to cut down on the variety of trees that I was using compared to the original Long Lake module. In the original Long Lake module, I used a lot of these Alaska cedar trees, and they looked really good in Trainz Mac 2, but they do not translate very well into Trainz 2019. Luckily, the hemlock trees, which I used as filler trees, looked great, and the conifer trees, although they had a model update, they looked good in the newer version of the game still. So I was able to just cut out the cedar trees and replace them with these wonderful hemlock trees. In addition, since this was a logging camp, a lot of it was going to be logged out anyway, so the trees weren't as important as in the original module, and it wasn't something I had to worry as much about. Interestingly, though, I had to worry about the grass. So Trainz 2019's lighting update means that a lot of the older grass assets look kind of shiny in the new version of the game. Now, this wouldn't be a problem for a Trainz 2019 specific route, because you could just use Turfix, but here we have to use old grass assets since this is a backdated route. Luckily, the majority of the grass assets used in the original Long Lake module aren't too shiny in the new version of the game, so thankfully there were no issues there. It would have been horrible to have to find a new Trainz 12 grass asset that also looked good in 2019. That's all I'm saying. So now we're getting to one of my favorite elements of this whole build, the slash burner. So these are also called teepee, beehive, and wigwam burners, depending on where you're from in the world, and they're effectively giant waste wood incinerators. In old lumber mills, they would need these things to burn extra sawdust or extra wood chips that they just couldn't do anything with at the time. So there aren't too many slash burners left in operation today. This is for two reasons. First, they are terrible for air quality. Since they're just giant wood incinerators, they spew ash and soot everywhere and just make the whole place dirty. In many municipalities, they've even been banned. Second, a lot of the uses for the burners have gone out the door. A lot of waste wood can now be used for other things. For example, sawdust can be used in the creation of wood pulp, which is an integral part in the process of paper production. It can also be used to make wood pellets, which are burned for various fuel sources. Meanwhile, excess bark can be used for wood chips, which are often used in commercial resources for people's backyards. It's quite interesting how all of these things that were once considered just waste are now able to be recycled and reclaimed in more modern processes. So what I'm doing right now is I'm using stumps as anchors for these wires on this spar pole. Even though a tree may have been felled, its root system is still useful in maintaining the stump's integrity in the ground. So this means that something can be tied to the stump, and then the roots of the now dead tree can be used to help hold something in place. This is a fairly common tactic in logging camps, but they can't use anything that's too heavy or else it could literally pull the stump out of the ground. It's a mix there, but sometimes it works. So right now I'm working on adding some details to the lumber camp. These places were often fairly haphazard operations since everything was designed to just be picked up and moved pretty much constantly, so there'd be clutter everywhere. I waited till the end to build this since a lot of the stuff would be fairly last minute, so I'm just placing in a lot of barrels and just random stuff. I did place the cooking pots and the campfires earlier since they were a fairly integral part of making the camp work. However, I felt just random stuff could be saved until the end just to make it feel a little bit more alive. So here I am working on adding some height to the build. I liked the way the logging camp looked in general, but the back portions, especially the areas that had already been logged, were just looking extremely flat and kind of boring if I'm being completely honest. Adding some hills and rocks was a great way for me to create visual interest without changing the flow of the rest of the build. Now I did have to replace some of the grass assets that I had previously used. I've used spline grass instead. This is because the spline grass actually will conform to the shape of the land, whereas the current grass did not. I used this sort of greenish color. I found one that I liked. It's a little bit lighter than some of the rest of the grass on the route, but I think it looks fine, and it just shows a slightly different type of foliage on the hills. Anyway, that's about the end of the build portion of the video. I really appreciate your continued support in allowing me to make this series a reality. I've been doing this for 2 years now, as I said at the beginning of the video, and I would love to keep doing it for more time. I do have some plans to start diversifying the content on the channel a little bit. I will be doing a more long-form Trainz build series starting fairly soon, hopefully, and I've got some ideas for some other types of content for the channel as well. But if M120 is your jam, don't worry. I've got multiple videos in the works, and I've got like an infinite wellspring of M120 module ideas. This series could go on literally forever, and I'd still have more videos to make. But regardless of what happens, I am just so appreciative for all the support that you guys have given me over these last couple years. It has been truly a blessing to continue to make content for you guys. So I really hope you enjoy what I end up producing in the future, M120 or otherwise. So thank you again. I hope you enjoy these wonderful cinematics that I've put together for you, and I will talk to you later. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram, @TrainMasterGT. This ride is on the download station, so you can play along for yourself. Thanks for watching, and here's to another great 2 years.